My name is Shannon, and I'm 43 years old. I build things for a living: houses, cabinets, furniture, anything that requires patience, measurements, and a steady hand. I like materials that make sense. Wood doesn't lie to you. You measure, you cut, you join, and it either fits or it doesn't. People are messier. They don't come with instructions, and they break in ways you don't always see coming. I met Daniel while I was repairing a porch for one of his friends. He stopped by just to check progress, but it was obvious he was really checking me out. He leaned against the railing like he already knew he'd end up in my life somehow. Divorced, 2 kids, his daughter Madison, 16, and his younger child Evan, 12. Daniel carried exhaustion like a second skin, the kind of tired that comes from trying to hold things together alone for too long. I recognized that look. I liked him because of it. The first time I went to his house, it looked like neglect had slowly won a war. Cabinets barely hanging on, a staircase that creaked like it might give up at any moment, shelves sagging under their own weight. I fixed everything. One thing led to another. I was there more days than not. Fixing a sink, then a door, then staying for dinner, then breakfast, then weekends. You don't notice when you've moved into someone's life until you're already unpacked. Madison was quiet at first, watchful, the kind of teenager who didn't say much but saw everything. One afternoon, she wandered into the garage while I was sanding a table and asked if she could try. I handed her the sandpaper and told her if she messed up the grain, she'd have to start over. She smiled for the first time and said, "Deal." We built a small table together, simple, clean. She carved her initials underneath. When she handed me $20 from her part-time job and said thank you for teaching me things, it hit me harder than I expected. I thought I was earning my place. Evan was the opposite. Chatty, curious, always hovering. He followed me around the garage, handing me nails, asking why I measured twice. I told him mistakes are expensive. He laughed and said I sounded like a robot. He bragged about me at school. According to Daniel, I was suddenly a role model. I didn't hate that feeling. After 8 months, I stopped pretending and proposed. We married quietly. I bought a 3-bedroom house with a yard and a garage big enough for my workshop. I paid for everything. Daniel handled groceries and utilities. It felt like a partnership. Madison claimed the biggest bedroom. Evan chose the one near the garden. I built Daniel a custom headboard. He cried. I pretended not to notice. I used to say I'd never help raise someone else's kids. I had a friend who warned me against it. Said never build your life in someone else's house. I thought he was just bitter. Looking at Madison and Evan unpacking boxes, I thought I'd beaten the odds. They called me Shannon easily. Naturally, it sounded like family. That was when I believed effort could earn belonging. I believed love was enough. I didn't know that while I was building a future, the people I was building it for were already planning how to take it apart. Life stayed smooth for a while, in that steady, predictable way that makes you start believing you're finally safe. We had dinner together most nights. Madison would drift in and out of the kitchen, quiet but present, and Evan would talk nonstop about school like he couldn't stand silence. Daniel would sit across from me, relaxed, letting the noise of a normal home settle into his shoulders. I caught myself thinking, this is it. This is what all the work was for. There was one day that really stayed with me. Madison had her first game of the season. She'd been talking about it all week, pacing around like she was getting ready for a battle. The morning of the game, she came to me while I was packing a cooler and tried to sound casual. "Shannon, can you come and sit on our side? Mom and Evan will be there, but you should too, you know, like my parent." She said it fast, like she didn't want to hear herself say it. But it hit me anyway, sharp and sudden, like my parent. I nodded like it was no big deal, of course, wouldn't miss it. But inside, something in me softened. I could have built an entire house with the pride I carried into those bleachers. During the game, she kept glancing over after every good play. I gave her a thumbs up each time, the kind that says, "I see you. You're doing good." When her team won, she ran toward us and fist bumped me first before hugging Daniel. Evan teased her about it for days. Those were the moments that fooled me into thinking I'd actually done it, that I'd built something real from scratch. And then Lydia showed up. I didn't even know she was still in town. Daniel rarely mentioned her. When he did, it was always vague, like she'd drifted away years ago and become a ghost. He told me she had moved on, that she was out of the picture. I didn't ask for details because I didn't want to be the person digging up old wounds. Besides, we were happy. Why invite trouble? But ghosts don't stay quiet forever. One Thursday afternoon, I came home early, dust still clinging to my boots, and there she was on my front porch like she belonged there. Tall, lean, hair pulled back neatly, wearing that kind of confidence you can feel before you even open the door. She smiled the second she saw me, and it wasn't friendly. It was the smile of someone who already decided what you were to her. "Shannon," she said, like she'd been practicing the name. "Heard you're the woman of the house now." I unlocked the door without matching her tone. Guess that's what happens when someone actually shows up. She laughed like we were sharing a joke. Then she stepped inside without waiting, her eyes scanning the living room like she was appraising it. "Nice place. Building must pay well." She said it light, but there was something sharp underneath. Envy wrapped in charm. Daniel came out of the kitchen and froze the moment he saw her. His whole face shifted, like he'd been punched by a memory. "Lydia," he said quietly, "what are you doing here?" Her smile widened. "Seeing my kids. I heard you finally settled down." She turned her head, eyes glinting. With her. Madison and Evan appeared behind Daniel, and the air changed immediately. Madison's posture straightened. Evan's mouth fell open like he'd seen a celebrity. Lydia crouched slightly, arms open, and Evan ran into her first. Lydia hugged him tight, too tight, like she needed the performance. Madison stepped forward slower. She didn't run, but she went into the hug, and I felt it in my chest like a small crack. Lydia stroked Madison's hair and looked over her head at me. "Your mom really landed on her feet," she said, and I caught it instantly. She didn't say we. She said, "Your mom," as if the kids were accessories that came with him, not lives she had abandoned. Daniel kept his voice calm. "We weren't expecting you. You should have called." Lydia sighed dramatically. "I didn't know I needed permission to see my own children." That line landed like bait. Daniel didn't argue. He just stepped aside. Madison watched him do it, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Approval, maybe. Or hope. Or the simple ache of wanting a parent to choose you. For the rest of that visit, I felt like I was watching someone slowly slide a wedge into the foundation of my home. Lydia walked room to room, touching things with her fingertips like she was claiming them. She commented on the furniture I'd built. She asked Madison about school in a voice that sounded practiced. Madison answered more than usual. Evan clung to Lydia's side like he was afraid she'd vanish if he blinked too long. And Daniel, the man who had built a life with me, looked nervous. He laughed too hard at her jokes, like he was trying to keep everything civil by force. He kept glancing at me like he was waiting for me to react, to snap, to start a fight. But I didn't, because I wasn't going to compete for love. I wasn't going to be that person. I told myself, kids need their mother, even if she shows up late. When Lydia finally left, she kissed Daniel's cheek like it was normal, then told the kids she'd text them. Madison stood in the doorway, watching her walk away, like the air had been knocked out of her lungs. Evan waved until Lydia's car turned the corner. The moment the door shut, the house felt quieter than it should have. Daniel cleared his throat and started rambling. She just wanted to reconnect. It's probably good for them. Healthy, even. I nodded, even though my stomach said otherwise. Yeah, healthy. But that night, after everyone went to bed, I stood in the hallway for a long time staring at Madison's door. It was closed. Before, it had always been cracked open. A tiny thing, barely noticeable, but it felt like a warning light. Over the next few weeks, Lydia didn't explode into our lives. She seeped in. At first, it was just messages. Little things. How was school? I'm proud of you. Miss you. Then it was weekend lunches. Daniel framed it like an opportunity. Madison came back buzzing. She talked about how Lydia took her to a shopping center, how Lydia promised she'd come to the next game, how Lydia said she'd make things right. Evan was softer about it. He'd show me pictures on Daniel's phone of them at the park, Lydia smiling like she'd never left, and he'd ask if it was okay that he spent time with her. I always said yes. I meant it. I wasn't going to be the woman who punished kids for wanting their parent, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting. Watching someone step into a life I built with sweat and late nights, then act like she had been part of it all along. It hit different, like someone taking credit for the house you built because they showed up for the ribbon cutting. A few weeks after Lydia came back, I decided Madison and I needed one-on-one time. Not to compete, not to pull her away, just to remind her that I was here, that I cared. I called it Girls' Night, dinner at a steakhouse. No small talk, just us. I found Madison in the garage cleaning up her gear. I tried to sound casual. Hey, how about Girls' Night tonight? Just you and me. She froze. Her hands stopped moving. Her face tightened like guilt had slipped in. Then she avoided my eyes. I can't. Why not? She shifted her weight, Mom already planned something. With me. Mom. She said it so naturally I almost forgot she hadn't used that word for years. Lydia had been back for weeks, and already the title was sliding into place like it had never left. I forced a smile. It's all right. You two have fun. She nodded quickly, relief flashing across her face. She hurried past me, and as she did, I noticed her hoodie half-zipped, her shoulders tense, like she didn't want to disappoint either side, but she knew which one felt safer to choose. That night, Daniel asked why I was so quiet. I told him I was tired. But really, I was thinking about my friend's warning again, the one I had laughed off. Never build your life in someone else's house. Maybe he hadn't been bitter. Maybe he had just been honest. I tried to let it go. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself Lydia was their mother. Of course they'd be excited. Of course Madison would want to believe in her. But little cracks started spreading under the paint. Madison began spending more time in her room with the door shut, headphones on, like she was building a wall I couldn't see through. Evan stopped hovering in the garage. The laughter at dinner sounded slightly forced, and every time Madison's phone buzzed, her eyes lit up in a way I hadn't seen when I walked into the room. One night I came home from a long day, dust in my hair, and found Madison stretched out on the couch, scrolling, barely looking up when I entered. "Hey," I said gently, "how was school?" "Fine. Need help with anything?" "No." That was it. One-word answers, no eye contact, like I was a stranger in my own living room. Evan tried to keep his cheerful self, but he got quieter too. I caught him watching Madison more than usual, like he was afraid of saying the wrong thing around her. Once, he came into the garage while I was cutting boards and just stood there fiddling with his sleeves. I shut off the saw and asked what was wrong. He forced a smile. Nothing, just bored. He lasted 2 minutes before his eyes filled with tears. "Evan, talk to me," I said, stepping closer. He muttered something about school, then ran out of the garage crying. And that was the moment I realized this wasn't about school. Something else was happening, something heavier. When Daniel got home, I told him. He didn't even look up from his phone. "They're just teenagers, Shannon. You know how they are. Moody, dramatic. It'll pass." "Daniel," Evan was crying over nothing. "Exactly, over nothing. Don't read into it." I walked away before I said something I couldn't take back, but the truth was sitting in my chest like a stone. It wasn't passing. It was changing. And I could feel it in the air, like the house itself was holding its breath. By the time the shift became obvious, it already felt too late to stop it. Madison quit her part-time job without telling anyone. No warning, no conversation. I found out when I asked her why she wasn't getting ready for her shift, and she shrugged like it didn't matter. It was boring, she said. The same job she had once been proud of. The one she used to wave her paychecks around from like proof she was becoming her own person. Boring didn't sound like the real reason, but I let it go. A few days later, the request started. $20 here, $50 there, money for lunch, money to hang out, money because she needed it. At first, I helped. That's what you do when you think you're supporting a kid you care about. But it didn't take long for it to feel less like help and more like expectation. One night, I finally said something. We were in the kitchen. Madison was leaning against the counter, scrolling on her phone, barely listening. I told her calmly that if she wanted spending money, she needed to earn it again. Either go back to work or help around the house. She looked up slowly, eyebrows lifting in disbelief. "Didn't you take on the parent role? Then act like it." For a second, I honestly thought I had misheard her. I felt the words settle in my chest, heavy and sharp. "What did you just say?" She sighed dramatically, like I was the problem. "You married Dad. You moved us into this house. You're supposed to take care of us. Isn't that what you signed up for?" I crossed my arms, keeping my voice steady. Being a parent doesn't mean handing out cash whenever you ask. It means teaching you how not to depend on it. She rolled her eyes. "Whatever. You're not my real mom anyway." She walked past me and slammed her bedroom door hard enough to rattle the pictures on the wall. I stood there waiting for Daniel to step in, waiting for him to say something, anything. He didn't. He stayed on the couch, pretending to scroll through his phone, pretending nothing had happened. That silence told me more than her words ever could. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room staring at the floorboards I had installed myself, wondering how something that once felt so solid could start feeling so hollow so fast. Every creak in the house sounded louder. Every shadow felt heavier. The next day, Madison avoided me completely. Evan tried to act normal, but the guilt was written all over his face. When I offered him breakfast, he shook his head and ran out the door early. I told myself they needed space. Teenagers do that. But deep down, I knew it wasn't space. It was distance. Dinner turned quiet. Madison's phone buzzed constantly. She smiled at the screen in ways she never smiled at me anymore. Lydia's name never appeared, but it didn't have to. I could feel her influence in the room like perfume that wouldn't fade. One night, I was in the garage late finishing a custom order. It was close to midnight when I came inside and heard Madison's voice upstairs, low, sharp, like she didn't want to be overheard. "She won't budge," she said. "I already told her she's not giving me anything." I froze halfway up the stairs. Another voice came through the speaker, muffled but familiar. Lydia's. Smooth. Confident. "Keep trying. She owes your father anyway. You deserve it." My stomach twisted. Madison muttered something back, frustrated. Then Lydia laughed quietly. That soft, approving laugh. That's my girl. I stepped back down the stairs without making a sound. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From anger. From the realization that this wasn't teenage attitude anymore. This was manipulation. Carefully planted. Carefully nurtured. When Daniel came down later asking why I was still awake, I told him I couldn't sleep. He shrugged and went back upstairs without another word. That's when it hit me. I was fighting this alone. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about respect. Lydia was in Madison's head, turning every sacrifice I'd made into something ugly, turning me into the enemy inside my own home. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like a battlefield, and I didn't even know how deep the lines had been drawn. That weekend, the tension thickened. Madison barely spoke to me. Daniel acted like everything was fine. Evan walked around like he was carrying a secret too heavy for him. Monday morning, the house emptied out. Daniel left for work. Evan went to school. Madison stormed out late, half-dressed, headphones in, slamming the door behind her. That's when I saw it. Her tablet was still on the kitchen counter, plugged in, the one I had paid for. Normally, I wouldn't touch it. I'm not a snooper. But when the kid who once thanked you for teaching her how to build things starts whispering with the woman who abandoned her, the rules change. I picked it up. The Messages app was already open. At first, it looked harmless. School chats, memes, friends. Then I saw the contact saved as Mom. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. The thread was long, weeks of messages, Lydia's charm dripping through every word. "He's got plenty. You deserve some of it. Don't let her control you. She's just the wallet." Madison pushed back at first. She told Lydia I said she should work for what she wanted. Lydia shut that down immediately. That's because she wants control. Once we get something set aside, I can fix things. We'll be a family again. That was the plan. Use her own daughter to drain me dry, then swoop in as the hero. Scrolling further, my chest tightened. Lydia asked about cash, asked where I kept it. Madison answered without hesitation. In the cabinet by the tool rack. I set the tablet down and stared at it like it might explode. I build things with my hands. I know how to fix broken wood, cracked joints, loose frames. But in that moment, I felt completely powerless. Everything I had built was being used against me. And then I saw something else. A separate chat between Madison and Evan. I opened it, and my heart broke all over again. Madison had written first, "You're either in or you're out." Evan replied, "This is wrong. Shannon doesn't deserve this." Madison fired back, "You're just like her, always taking her side." Evan answered, "Because she's good to us. You're letting Mom use you." Madison ended it with one line, "Don't talk to me again." I leaned back in the chair, staring at the screen while the house sat silent around me. Lydia hadn't just turned my stepdaughter against me. She'd turned her against her own brother, too. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I did what I always do when something is breaking. I started preparing. I didn't confront anyone right away. I've learned that when something is rotting from the inside, ripping it open too fast just spreads the damage. So instead, I moved quietly, methodically. The way I always do when I'm trying to understand how something was built and where it's failing. The first thing I did was move the cash. The envelope I sometimes kept in the workshop for small jobs, the one Madison had told Lydia about. I emptied the cabinet by the tool rack and tucked the money into a drawer near the front door. If Lydia was coming for it, she'd be looking in the wrong place. Then I logged into the family account, the credit card I'd linked for gas and school expenses. I removed Madison's access. I froze the emergency account I'd set up months earlier, the one I hoped we'd never need. The tablet was still unlocked. Madison never bothered setting a passcode. I added one myself and changed the account password. By the time I finished, my coffee had gone cold. That evening, the house slipped back into its fake normal. Daniel made pasta like it was any other night. Madison stayed upstairs. Evan sat on the couch pretending to read, his eyes darting toward the stairs every time there was movement. He looked scared. Not guilty. Scared. I watched him for a long moment before saying anything. Hey, Evan, come on, let's go grab some ice cream. He hesitated. Now. Yeah, now, my treat. The drive was quiet, the kind of quiet that presses in on your ears. A few blocks passed before he finally spoke. Did I do something wrong? No, I said gently, but I think you're carrying something that isn't yours to carry. His lip trembled. The tears came fast after that. He told me everything in broken sentences, how Lydia had asked him to help, how she said if they took some money, she could come back, and everything would be normal again, how Madison told him he had to choose, how he said no, how he didn't want to lose his sister or make me angry. I pulled into the parking lot and let him cry. He kept apologizing over and over, like this was somehow his fault. You did the right thing, I told him, and that matters. Don't ever feel bad for telling the truth. He wiped his eyes and asked quietly if I was going to tell his dad. I told him I just wanted him safe for now, that the rest was on me. We sat there a while, two people in a parked car pretending the world hadn't cracked open. I handed him a cone with extra sprinkles and told him it was doctor's orders. He smiled, small but real. On the way home, he fell asleep against the window. I drove slower than usual, thinking. By the time I pulled into the driveway, I knew this wasn't about teenage rebellion. It wasn't about attitude or growing pains. It was about manipulation. And it ran straight through the one person who should have protected them instead of using them. I carried Evan to his room, tucked him in, and stood there longer than I needed to, watching him sleep. For the first time, I didn't feel like a parent. I felt like a guard, like I was standing between a child and something dangerous wearing a familiar face. Downstairs, the family photos stared back at me, smiles frozen in time, poses I'd arranged. For the first time, they didn't feel like memories. They felt like evidence. I gathered the tablet and the screenshots I'd printed and set them on the kitchen counter. Daniel was unloading groceries, humming like nothing was wrong. We need to talk, I said. He frowned. What's going on? I slid the papers toward him and placed the tablet on top. That. He skimmed the first page, then the second, his face drained of color. What is this? Messages, I said flatly. Between your daughter and your ex. Planning to steal from me. You might want to sit down. He scrolled faster now. When he hit the part about the cash, his hands started shaking. He dropped the tablet like it burned. I can't believe this, he whispered. Believe it, I said. It's been going on for weeks. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. She's a kid. She doesn't understand. Lydia's manipulating her. She's 16, Daniel. Not 6. She knows stealing is wrong. He stopped pacing, turned toward me. She's confused, and Lydia is still her mother no matter what she's done. That sentence landed harder than anything Madison had said. Still her mother. I laughed once, bitter. Yeah, I noticed. His eyes hardened. Don't make this worse. You're blowing it out of proportion. Blowing it out of proportion, I repeated quietly. She tried to rob me. And you're defending her. He didn't answer. He looked at the floor. That silence was louder than any argument. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark living room replaying every excuse, every dismissal, every time I'd been told not to read into things. By 2 a.m, the thought I'd been avoiding finally surfaced. Maybe it was time to walk away. The word divorce didn't feel explosive. It felt heavy, tired, like admitting a structure was beyond repair. When the sun came up, I decided I'd give it one last chance, one last moment to see if there was anything left worth saving. But deep down, I already knew. I thought I was prepared. I wasn't. The afternoon it finally snapped. It started like any other. I pulled into the driveway later than usual, dust still clinging to my clothes, shoulders aching from a long day. As I walked up the path, I heard Madison's voice through her open bedroom window. She was laughing. Not the soft kind, the sharp kind that carries. Yeah, she said into her phone, still laughing. She's just Dad's wife with money. Acts like she owns the place. It's pathetic. I stopped walking. The words didn't sting. They burned. Slow, deliberate, like someone pressing a blade instead of slicing. I didn't knock. I didn't pause. I walked straight down the hall and pushed her door open. She was sprawled on her bed, phone still in her hand. The smirk vanished the moment she saw my face. Get off the phone, I said. She hesitated, then hung up slowly, eyes narrowing. You could have knocked. I heard what you said, I replied. Say it again. She rolled her eyes like she was bored. Relax, it's not that serious. And not that serious. You've been lying, stealing, talking trash about the woman who kept this roof over your head. She sat up, crossing her arms. You think you own me. You're not my real mom. You're just some woman Dad married. Know your place. For a moment, everything went quiet inside me. Then I nodded. You're right, Madison. I'm not your mom. And I don't own you. But I also don't have to let you live in my house while you act like this. Her expression faltered. What? I walked to her closet, grabbed a duffel bag, and started packing. Shirts, jeans, shoes, whatever my hands landed on. You can stay with your mother if she's such a role model. You can't do that, she shouted, jumping up. Watch me. Daniel rushed in, panic written all over his face. Shannon, what are you doing? What you should have done weeks ago, I said without stopping. Setting boundaries. He grabbed the bag from my hands. You can't just throw her out. She's still a kid. She's a thief, I snapped, and a liar. He flinched. Madison stood behind him, arms folded, chin high. You can't control us, she said. You're right, I answered calmly. I can't control anyone, but I can decide who lives under my roof. Daniel's voice cracked. Please, just let her stay tonight. We'll figure it out tomorrow. I looked at Madison, then at him. One night, I said. She's gone in the morning. If she's still here by noon, you can both pack. I walked out before either of them could answer. That night, Evan knocked softly on my office door. Do you hate us now? He whispered. The question hit harder than any insult. No, sweetheart, I don't hate you. You did nothing wrong. His voice shook. Everything's falling apart. Sometimes things have to fall apart so you can see what they're really made of, I said quietly. He didn't fully understand, but he nodded anyway and went to bed. The house went silent. Sometime after 2 a.m, a faint sound pulled me out of sleep. A rattle, then whispers. 2 voices, familiar. I slipped out of bed. Daniel stirred. What's wrong? Stay here, I whispered. I grabbed my flashlight and moved down the stairs slowly. My heart was loud, but my steps weren't. They were in the living room. Madison and Lydia. A duffel bag sat open on the couch. My watch. A few tools. Cash from the drawer near the door. Lydia's voice was low and urgent. Check the drawers. She keeps some around. I stepped off the last stair. Lose something. They both froze. Madison turned pale. Lydia straightened, her smirk already forming. Didn't mean to wake you, Lydia said. Just talking with my daughter. Yeah, I replied, shining the light on the bag. You always have family talks with other people's money. You've got plenty, Lydia snapped. Don't act like this is a big deal. You broke into my house, I said. You're turning your kid into a thief. Madison's voice shook. You said we were just taking back what was ours. Ours. You live in a house I paid for. Eat food I buy. Wear clothes I provide. And you call that yours. Lydia stepped forward, chest out. You stole my family. I'm just taking it back. You walked out, I said calmly. They outgrew you. Her face twisted. Watch your mouth. She shoved me, hard. I stumbled, but stayed upright. That all you've got? She lunged again. I caught her arm and shoved her back. She crashed into the table, knocking over a lamp. Stop, Madison screamed. Footsteps thundered down the stairs. Daniel froze halfway when he saw Lydia. Lydia, he whispered. From upstairs, Evan's voice shook. What's happening? Call the police, I said. Sirens cut through the night minutes later. Neighbors' lights flicked on. The officers took one look at the scene and everything fell into place. They cuffed Lydia in my living room. Madison cried. Daniel sat shaking. Evan clutched my sleeve. As they led Lydia away, the house felt hollow. Something had finally broken. And there was no fixing it now. The house didn't feel like a home after that night. It felt like an echo. Police lights faded. Doors closed. Statements were taken. Evidence logged. The officers were calm, professional, almost gentle in the way people get when they've seen this kind of mess too many times. Lydia was charged with breaking and entering and attempted theft. Madison wasn't arrested that night because she was a minor, but they told Daniel she'd be questioned later. The words later sounded heavier than they should have. When the front door finally shut and the sirens disappeared down the street, the silence came rushing back in like a flood. Daniel sat on the couch with his head in his hands. Madison was upstairs, sobbing so loudly I could hear her through the ceiling. Evan stood frozen near the stairs, eyes wide, arms wrapped around himself like he was trying to stay in one piece. I handed Daniel a blanket without saying a word, not because I felt sorry for him, but because I didn't have the energy to be cruel anymore. He whispered my name once, like he wanted comfort. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. The next few days moved in slow motion. Lydia tried calling from jail. Daniel didn't answer. Madison begged him to talk to her mother, to fix it, to make it go away. Daniel kept saying he didn't know what to do, like the damage wasn't already done. Evan stayed close to me, quiet but present, like he was afraid I'd disappear if he looked away too long. Detectives came back. Madison was questioned. She cried. She said she didn't mean for it to go that far. She said she just wanted her mom back. The court gave her probation and mandatory counseling. Lighter consequences because of her age. I didn't fight it. Whatever punishment she got wasn't going to undo what had already been taken. Daniel tried to talk to me every night. Apologies, explanations, regret layered on regret. He said he should have listened. Said he never thought Lydia would go that far. Said he didn't see it happening right under his nose. I listened without interrupting, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a deep, exhausted clarity. The kind you get when something finally ends after dragging on too long. A week later, we had the conversation that mattered. He stood in the doorway of the bedroom, hands shaking, voice small. "I'm sorry, Shannon. I defended the wrong people. I should have protected you. I should have believed you." I looked at him and realized something important. This wasn't the man I married. This was the man I had been carrying. "Yeah," I said quietly, "you should have." There was no fight, no screaming, no dramatic exit. Just two people standing in a room full of things that no longer meant the same thing. We both knew there was nothing left to save. I filed for divorce the following week. We kept it clean, quick. No dragged-out battles, no courtroom drama. We divided what little there was to divide. He moved out with Madison and Evan to stay with his sister in another town. I stayed. Not because I loved the house anymore, but because I built it. Evan started writing me letters after they left. Neat handwriting. Little drawings in the margins. He told me about school, about counseling, about missing the garage. I wrote back short notes. "Proud of you. Keep being kind." He sent another letter the next week and another after that. I kept them all in a box on my desk. Months passed. Then Madison reached out. First a text, "I'm sorry." Then an email. I didn't understand what I was doing. Then a letter. The handwriting was different, less confident. She wrote about therapy, about learning accountability, about missing the nights we worked in the garage together. I read it once, then folded it and placed it in the same box. Not because I hated her, but because forgiveness doesn't rebuild what betrayal tears apart. Some bridges aren't burned. They're dismantled piece by piece until there's nothing left to cross. Daniel never asked me to come back. Maybe he knew better. Maybe he finally understood. One evening, I sat on the porch as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the yard. The same spot where I once thought I'd built a future. I thought about how it all started. How I believed love and effort could earn respect. How I built a life for people who saw me as replaceable. They told me to know my place. Turns out my place was anywhere but there. The house was quiet in a way it had never been before. Not the tense quiet that comes from people avoiding each other, or the brittle quiet that follows a fight, but the kind that settles in once everything unnecessary has finally left. No slammed doors, no whispered phone calls, no footsteps pacing above my head, just stillness. For a while, that stillness scared me. I had spent so long holding everything together that I didn't know what to do with empty space. I'd built my days around other people's needs, their moods, their expectations. Now there was only my own breathing, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint creak of the house cooling at night. So I went back to work. I fixed what I had neglected, sanded the spots I rushed before, refinished the table Madison and I built together, even though I told myself I wouldn't. I didn't keep it for nostalgia. I sold it. Let it go to someone who didn't know its story. Some things don't need to be carried forward. The divorce finalized quietly. No last-minute pleas. No sudden apologies. Daniel signed the papers with red eyes and shaking hands. I signed them steady. Not because it didn't hurt, but because the hurt had already happened long before the ink touched paper. Evan kept writing. He told me about his grades improving, about learning how to speak up in counseling, about how he wanted to build things when he got older. I never promised him anything I couldn't keep. I never told him I'd always be there. I just told him the truth, that he mattered, that being kind was a choice worth making even when it cost you something. That was enough. Madison didn't write again after that first letter. Maybe she understood. Maybe she didn't. Either way, I didn't chase closure. Some lessons don't come with neat endings. They come with distance. Months later, a neighbor asked me if I regretted it. The marriage, the effort, the years. I thought about that question longer than I needed to. No, I said finally. I don't regret loving people. I regret believing love alone was enough. Because love without respect is just labor, and labor without appreciation is exploitation dressed up as family. One evening, as I locked up the workshop and turned off the lights, I caught my reflection in the window. Older, tired, but standing straight. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was bracing for impact. I thought about the words Madison threw at me in anger. Know your place. She was right about one thing. My place was never inside a home where I had to earn permission to belong. My place was never at the bottom of someone else's family tree, expected to give without question and disappear without complaint. My place was here, in a life I built with my own hands, on my own terms. I gave everything I had once. I won't do it again for people who only saw me as convenient. Some lessons you only need to learn once, and that one was enough.